So earlier this year, we talked with Melissa Scalercio about Prompt Builder because she was on the customer side, and she had some pretty neat things to say about how they were using Prompt Builder. You can go back into the Salesforce archives there and listen to that episode. And in case you're not familiar, Prompt Builder allows you to simplify users' daily tasks by integrating generative AI moments powered by prompt templates into their workflow. It's really cool. You get to bind a field and put sparkles on it. That's what it's called, literally, sparkles. And so I wanted to talk to one of the product managers that is working on Prompt Builder, and that is Liz Awad, who is based in New York, and she is helping build the future of Prompt Builder. So she not only gives us some really useful insights into Prompt Builder and how she's seeing other customers use it, but also into what's coming with Prompt Builder, and you may have already seen it. And then, fun fact, we get to learn a hobby, and I bet it's one maybe that most of you do. I've seen it on a ton of TV shows, but I'm not going to tell you because you have to listen to the episode. So with that, let's get Liz on the podcast. So Liz, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I'm excited to talk about Prompt Builder, and we've talked about Prompt Builder in the past with Melissa earlier, but I wanted to hear from somebody that's actually working on the product and doing some really fun stuff, because not only is Prompt Builder a really cool tool for admins to use, and we're seeing that in all of our AI Now tours, but also there's a lot of really cool features coming as well. But I'm getting the cart in front of the horse like I always do. Let's start off with you. Liz, how did you get to Salesforce and start owning Prompt Builder?
Sure. So I've been at Salesforce a little over a year now. I'm actually part of a rotational product management program here at Salesforce. So previously I was on Sales Cloud, and I was working on adoption, which is actually admin relevant, as a new feature on Sales Cloud is launching soon called Sales Cloud Go. So I was part of that development. And then I knew my manager, Avantika, and she's the one that pulled me into Prompt Builder, where I am now.
Wow.
So I've been working here for around 5 months now, and I'm very excited. It's been a great journey. Things have changed really fast, as you know, in the large language model space. There's new models all of the time, and we are, like you said, launching some amazing new features.
Yeah, I mean, just trying to keep up with, I remember when Einstein came out and we suddenly had to learn large language models as part of our nomenclature. And then now we're having to learn generative AI and prompts and grounding. And my most fun word to say is hallucinations. But because, hallucinations, what could go wrong there? But that's a different podcast you can listen about. So Prompt Builder, what are exciting things that you kind of dug into and are happy to work on kind of out of the gate? And we'll preface that by saying, tell me how Prompt Builder is different than Copilot.
Yes, great question. So Prompt Builder is a low-code prompt management tool. And this basically allows you to create reusable prompts that are being sent to these large language models. And prompts are just instructions that you send so that the model outputs the correct text. And the way that it's different than Copilot, the way that we view it actually is they go hand in hand. So the prompts that you create using Prompt Builder can actually be connected to custom actions in Copilot. And then within Copilot, when you ask Copilot a question, it can invoke the prompt that you have created. So they're different in that Prompt Builder is this tool that allows you to create the custom prompts. And Copilot is maybe one area where your end users actually invoke the prompts.
Yeah, Copilot's a little more conversational.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. I mean, that's also one of the things that, as a former Salesforce administrator I love about Prompt Builder is it's just a little sparkle button that my users have to press and they get magic.
Exactly.
It doesn't depend on their ability to write a good prompt.
No, right? It's the admins. Now you all become prompt engineers.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say you do need to spend some time reworking your prompts, testing your prompts. In Prompt Builder, you can even change the models. So certain models are better at writing sales emails than others. And so depending on your use case, that Prompt Builder workspace is really where you can test. Just so, like you said, your end users just get to see magic.
Yeah. So let me ask, what do you do to get better at writing prompts?
So I was introduced to the concept of, prompt engineering like the rest of the world when ChatGPT came out in November of 2022. And the first thing I did was just go to the website and start asking it questions that I knew the answers to already, or like I would be able to tell like that's a good response and that's a bad response. So it was simple as like write a text to my mom wishing her a happy birthday. And when the LLM responds, it used maybe like a formal tone or something that I personally would never send to my mom. And so then I'm like, make it sound more casual. And I'm very close to my mom, so make sure you include that. And that idea of like editing a prompt and trying to have it fit your tone and your style can be used in an enterprise context as well. The other thing to think about is when you're telling, ChatGPT or your LLM more information, that's called grounding. Like that's giving more data to the LLM about the type of response that you want back. So all of those things are really important in prompt engineering.
Yeah, I think so I'll be honest with you. The first time I ever heard the term grounding was when I was doing the Data Now workshop, and we talked about building a prompt in Prompt Builder, and I think the very first line was acting as, and then you could fill in, user $user dot organization, like however that worked.
Mm-hmm.
And it was literally meant to pull the running user, which is you. And I thought, oh, that totally makes sense. And then you could pull in, like, here's different information, because I think back to the way you brought in writing prompts, the rest of the world was just kind of like, oh, neat. With ChatGPT, I just ask it questions. But here we can actually pull in and say, no, I want you to go into my Salesforce org and really pull that data out, as opposed to just asking it for a text for your mom.
Exactly. And that's what really makes it powerful is that it's dynamic, right? So what you said here is like you're putting in, you can think of it as a variable or a field that's like user.name. And when that prompt is invoked at runtime, that is replaced with the actual end users running the name, like in Salesforce. And that prevents you from having to create multiple iterations of prompts. And when we say grounding, all we're really saying is data. It's just a fancy way of saying injecting more data into your prompts.
Right.
And with Prompt Builder, that data can come from a wide variety of places, not just your CRM. It can come from Data Cloud. You can use a flow to inject data. It can get really powerful, which is really exciting.
I mean, if you think about it, if you really wanted to go back in time, this is where a time machine would help to tell our parents, if I'm grounded, it just means I've got the data. So thanks.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. You're grounded for a month. No, I'm grounded for life because I've got data. That's how you get more grounded. Just realized that kind of dawned on me. So one thing that I did for the longest time, I love using the little sticky notes feature on my Mac. When I would write a good prompt for ChatGPT and it would turn something out, I was like, oh, awesome. I would copy that and I'd hang on to it. And then I remember sharing stuff with my team early on, and they're like, oh, how did you do that? And I would share the prompt with them, right? The text.
Yes.
And then they would plug that in and they would get something different. And I realized early on with AI, like the learning curve for AI is everybody's different as opposed to when we were trying to learn like Flow Builder. Like when Flow came out, the admin created the flow and then the record or whatever the action was worked the same for everybody. And then as I started looking at AI, I was like, boy, this is going to be tough for users because it really depended more on what is that end user's ability to write a good prompt or how do I disseminate good prompts to my users. And that kind of all changed for me when I saw Prompt Builder because we can put all that in there, which means the end user gets a solid experience every single time without having to be good at writing prompts, right?
Exactly. The end user doesn't need to be the prompt engineer because as an admin, you are creating those instructions every time and it's following that template. Now, I will say you can have different outputs because it's generative. So even if you're invoking the same instructions, the response might be a little different every time you call the large language model, but it should be somewhat the same every time you call it.
Right. I mean, obviously, if it was the same, then it'd just be like email templates.
Exactly. And I do want to say, now that you've brought up email templates, just a small use case or a small story, which is
Yeah.
one of our customers was telling us that they used to use the email templates and now they're using the sales email template in Prompt Builder. And because it's generative, their delivery rate was much higher, as in like Gmail, Outlook, and these email clients wouldn't mark it as scam and it would actually deliver in their, whoever they were contacting that inbox. And that was really interesting for us to hear. Like that was the first time we had thought about, that metric of tracking delivery rate and how when you're using generative AI, it really there is no necessarily like it's not a pattern, it's not a template. Like those words can change every time you're calling the large language model with the same theme throughout. And that was really interesting for us to hear on the product management team.
No, I like that. That actually leads into the next question I had, which was, so where are you seeing admins deploy Prompt Builder the most?
It's a great question. It really depends on industry and use case, but we've seen a lot of field generation templates, which is what you described, where your end users see that magic button and you use a prompt template to fill in a field on a record.
Okay.
We've also seen a lot of sales emails use cases, case summarization use cases. It's really across the board. And the best part is you as an admin get to be creative with it because you can really think of, 100 plus use cases. That's why we have Flex template to allow you to customize and put in as many objects or even now strings or free text as input to a prompt.
So tell me more about the templates. I forget. There's 4 types of templates?
Yes, there are 4 types of templates: sales email, field generation, record summary, and Flex templates.
And Flex sounds the coolest.
Yes, Flex is, it's in the namesake. It's allowing you to create those custom templates where you can call an invocable action, you can use flows. And one feature that we just released is actually called string inputs or free text, where using a Flex template, you can have text as your only input. Previously, we required templates to be associated with objects. But we heard from customers, hey, what if I have a transcript of a chat and I only want to use that as my grounding data? Well, that's why, we just released this actually this month. So it's very exciting.
That's interesting. So tell me more about that, because I think I saw that in one of the release readinesses that you did.
Yes. So the use case here is that if you want to invoke a template from a flow or maybe using Apex, and all you want as the input is just like text itself. So another example could be an agent gathers a question from a user in a chat, and you want to use that question as input into the prompt. Previously, you would still have to associate that template with a record, which would just be wasted time, and you're not actually using that record as grounding data. But now you can just have that template with the input as a user question, for example.
Interesting. Yeah, no, I like that. I think in the earlier podcast we talked to Melissa. She was using the sales email stuff a lot. I'm curious, do you have any insight? So maybe this is just me, and I've worked in these overly micromanaged organizations where marketing needs to see every period and comma and I that's dotted, which is why they loved email templates so much. And you mentioned sales email templates, right? How are marketers adjusting to AI where it's not word for word every single time?
That's a really good question. And I just want to point out that we still recommend that a human's eyes are on the responses from the large language models before they're sent out. So we don't recommend automated generation and sending just yet, primarily for that reason, just to make sure that either a marketer or a sales rep understands exactly what is being sent to their customers. So it's really just used as a tool to help, like an assistant, as opposed to replacing, that job of writing the email. It gives you a baseline for you to go in and potentially edit or add certain things that you want depending on the customer. Now, like you said, some organizations are stricter than others. And so maybe they'll in their company have a process, which is you still use the sales email template to start, but then someone either needs to check it before it's sent, or the admin can actually go into the audit trail and see all the generated emails, and someone can review those and make sure that that passes, their standard of quality.
Sure. Yeah, no, I like that. Plus, you could probably include some stylistic cues in the prompt when you're building that as an admin as well. So
definitely, that is recommended. Yes, voice and tone is definitely recommended. You really want to be as specific as possible. You can even give an example of a great email in your instructions. Say like,
well, that works out nice.
This is an example of a great email we would want to send to a customer.
Interesting. I like that. I mean, it's so much, there's so many areas now, I think, of Salesforce to talk about with stakeholders as an admin, not just like features that are coming out, but it's also, I know working with sales teams, thinking of, I've always had that sales manager that would come up to me and say, well, so-and-so writes great emails. How do we make everybody a great email writer? And like Prompt Builder now has that ability, right? You can work with that great sales person to get some of their great email ideas and use those as some initial early prompts that you can then disseminate to all of your sales team, which to me is, I'm sure that salesperson doesn't like that. Salespeople are a little competitive that way.
Yes, that's interesting. That's true. I never thought about that.
So as a product manager, I guess, admins do a lot of product managing. Is there any advice that you would give that you've learned in your year or so at Salesforce that would help them kind of manage the onslaught of new features or how you balance priorities?
Definitely. I think the biggest skill that's important in being a great PM is just communication and over communication, and ensuring that everyone is aligned on not only what the priorities are, but why they are prioritized how they are, right? Because when you explain, like, this is the use case, this is the problem, and this is the solution, and this is why it's important, then you really get that alignment. As far as how to understand what's being released at Salesforce and all the new features, that is a beast within itself. But that's why we have release notes. That's why we have all of the help docs. And I would encourage you to even engage with your AEs and your SEs to learn more and inquire. And as product managers on Prompt Builder and Copilot, we are actually aiming to talk to our customers as much as we can because we learn from you all, because you all are the ones that are engaging with the tool every day. And so that's also what helps us prioritize is engaging with customers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, too often as an admin, I couldn't communicate enough with all the features that were coming out. So thanks for coming on the podcast, Liz. I will end by saying it's always kind of fun to know outside of managing Prompt Builder, which is what admins love, if there's anything fun you do as a hobby.
I've recently picked up, or not recently, but in the past year or two, pickleball. But
Okay.
I'm based in New York. And so that requires me to fight over pickleball courts as there's limited space. And it's actually turned into quite an expensive hobby recently because they charge per hour and per court. But I love it. I grew up playing competitive tennis. And so this has just kind of been my outlet as I can play tennis and racket sports, but not be too harsh on myself. Now, my brother thinks that pickleball is an abomination. And, there's really two groups of thought on that, coming from tennis players. But I love it. And it's been really fun to.
I mean, it's about the size of a tennis court, right?
No,
From
it's
what
actually
I know.
much smaller.
Okay, but about.
About.
Smaller. Okay. Okay.
Smaller
I
rackets.
mean, my neighbors set up pickleball in their driveway.
Yeah, if anyone wants to challenge me to a pickleball game, I'm ready.
You should set that up. Do a pickleball tournament in New York. That's what we should have is a pickleball court at Dreamforce.
That would be amazing. Maybe I should go talk to the event team.
That would be kind of low impact sort of thing. But there's shoes, right? There's pickleball shoes. And I know that you have to have a special paddle. Is it called a paddle or is it called a racket?
I believe it's called a paddle. Actually, I'm not sure. Yes.
I mean, it kind of looks like a ping pong paddle, just a little bit bigger.
Exactly. It is called a paddle.
Okay.
And you actually, you can get fancy with it, but you could go out in sneakers and be totally fine. You just have to watch the angles.
Yeah. Boy, I don't know. Well, good luck with that, because unfortunately in New York, it's probably also hard to have an apartment any kind of size at which you could practice pickleball. It'd be easier if you should take a ping pong.
Mm-hmm.
It's New York size friendly.
Yes, exactly. Well, thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. Thanks for being on, Liz. Okay, I feel like I've been on a lot of television shows lately that have featured pickleball. Am I right or am I wrong? It's just everywhere. I think there was even some sort of deal on pickleball equipment on one of the morning shows I was watching. So good for people playing pickleball. I don't know. Do you play pickleball? I don't, but my mom wants to play pickleball. So we'll see how that goes. I do think it would be fun to have a pickleball court at Dreamforce, don't you? We should ask for that. Anyway, I thought that was a great, fun discussion with Liz. I think it's pretty cool, the stuff that admins can do without writing a single line of code in Prompt Builder. I wish I had this when I was a Salesforce admin. Boy, it'd be really cool. Anyway, if you enjoyed this discussion, I did. I'd love if you could just share it with one person. So if you're listening in iTunes or if you're listening in Apple Podcasts or any of the podcast apps, usually all you have to do is click the three buttons. There's three buttons somewhere. You get a little arrow. You could share it on social. You could share it with your friends. You could text it, post it Facebook, LinkedIn. I would appreciate any of those to help spread the word of the podcast. And of course, you can always give me feedback on the podcast if you go to iTunes. I'd love to hear what you think. Now, if you're looking for any of the resources, links to anything that we mentioned, or just great blog post reading and podcast listening in general, that is on admin.salesforce.com, including a transcript of this show. And you can join with other admins in our Admin Trailblazer community. And that, of course, is in the Admin Trailblazer group. And I'll include the link to that in the show notes. So until next week, we'll see you in the cloud.